every single thing we do begins with a thought, shouldn't we be that much more intentional and protective with who we allow to have access? Creativity and innovation often come from boredom. Same for opportunities to miss each other and come together in community. We're stronger together, united, built as one. At our core, we want human connection so bad, ever-present connectedness, chances to interact and communicate digitally, and even the depths to which a relationship can really go are often the illusion or fool's gold that we use to view this world. Our devices and access to technology have never been greater. The immense power that we have right in the palm of our hands is unlike any time ever before in history. We hear things like more power, greater speed, but what about the responsibility? What about the pitfalls or risks that might come associated with such a massive force? And so today we want to talk about the idea of technology and how to keep it in its proper perspective and making sure that we use it as a tool to impact the world for positive, to make the changes that we want to see and that we're not being controlled by it. This is the infinite evolution. And how despite what the messaging might tell you, how that technology will always be a poor replacement for actual human connection. This is the infinite evolution. Now, to be clear, this is not a message of condemnation. Technology is really important, really useful, and can be used in order to make some real change, but we also have to be aware of the pitfalls. And as quickly as technology is evolving, there seem to be very few guardrails being put up, very few training for everyone involved on how to use it, how to interact with it, and how not to get lost in losing the human connection. There was once a time where people would take typing classes and computer classes, but at the rate in which technology is evolving, we need constant conversations and dialogue about just what to do and how to approach all of the tools we have available to us. So I'm not saying not to embrace it, I'm saying put it in its proper perspective and never lose the human connection. To see people who speak with AI and chatbots far more than they do normal humans, literally pouring out their hearts, using it as a therapist and hoping for results in turn. And I get it. Because if you can't afford a therapist or you don't want to talk to a person, maybe you feel embarrassed, I get how that would be the past. However, what exactly happens when we begin to offload more and more tasks that humans were meant for onto machines? We have to have some sort of fidelity that the people behind them, that the programming behind it is actually working in our favor. And right now, you really don't. In fact, you never truly can. There have been numerous experiments that show what happens when people try to shut down different chatbots. They don't like it. They sort of respond the way humans do, which lets you know these bots, much like humans, eventually become biased. The technology, the algorithm, all of it isn't as objective as many of us would like to think. Our news is not objective. Our sources are not reasonable. And therefore, it becomes that much easier to have your perspective be skewed. If every single day you're talking to a therapist who's never giving it to you real, who's only telling you what you want to hear and only telling you things that will keep you coming back, you got to be careful, because how can they really give you the truth when there's always an incentive? And please believe there always is. Just like when you open up and become vulnerable with a human, opening up and becoming vulnerable with technology also has its pitfalls, and you got to be aware of them. I'm not saying not to use it. I'm saying keep in mind that it's a tool, not a be-all, end-all, not the answer or solution to everything, but simply a tool. It also makes sense that people will rely more on technology like AI and chatbots because of the loneliness epidemic. There's so many people who feel like they don't have anybody to talk to. But if everybody is lonely and everybody is on devices, that means on some level, we actually could reach across the aisle and start to connect with each other. As beautiful as technology and social media has become, we have to admit that one of the biggest drawbacks is it keeps us isolated. Everyone is on their separate devices. It may feel like we're connected. It may seem like you're talking to an actual person, but there's something different about connecting with a person in real life, about talking to a person in real time and seeing their reaction, watching them smile, and knowing that you're being heard. Understanding the beauty behind this connection is one of the most important things we have, and this is the infinite evolution. What if that AI or chatbot lies to you? What if it's not accurate? What if all it is an information aggregator and it's just collecting data from different sources and you can't fully verify if everything that it's saying is true for you? Who will be held accountable? What if it catches a virus or a disease? What if it has an off day? What if it has an attitude? How do you know for a fact with fidelity that you're getting exactly what you asked for and not what's most beneficial to somebody else? The cost is too great to not at least think about these things, question them, and have it in the back of your mind that you can't simply be a zombie for technology. Again, use it for your benefit, but also keep in mind that not everything that glitters is gold. For every benefit and advantage you have, there also may be some negatives and disadvantages that you want to be aware of. That's what we're talking about today. Much of what technology does is add convenience to our lives. And when I look at the way people lived in the past, I'm certainly happy with where we are right now. However, there has to be a limit. When we start turning off our mind, our thinking, our emotions, our ability to perceive, and shift shift all of the responsibility to tech, then we got an issue. We have to be hyper intentional about the things we're doing, the queries we're adding, and how it's affecting us in the long term. Because as much as we want technology to add ease and leisure to our life, we also got to be careful not to offload the most important processes that go through our mind every day. If every single thing we do begins with a single thought, shouldn't we be that much more protective of the things that go into our mind? The idea of using tech to offload tasks that used to be boring, unmanageable, require massive amounts of money or time or power, many of these things can be alleviated with the use of technology. However, we shouldn't be offloading everything. There has to be a limit. Offloading the most important processes in our lives are not going to make us happier or more fulfilled. It actually takes away from the human experience. Faster and easier doesn't necessarily mean better. What about the process of building? Think about what it takes to build a bond with a human. Time, patience, consistency, trust, communication. Now flip the dynamic and compare what it takes to build it with AI. It might seem like with a few queries they start to understand you, but do they really? Does it actually care and love you? Well, with that time and consistency and patience, a relationship and a bond is formed. Can you truly say the same thing about AI? Does the same thing really exist with that technology? The way a human will love you and care about you in ways that go beyond themselves, no piece of technology can ever do that for you because it is amoral. It's not good or bad. It's without any ethics. It's whatever it is that you decide to put into it. Well, if our lives were so perfect, we wouldn't be going to technology anyways. If you weren't a little bit lonely, you wouldn't spend so much time on social media. If you weren't a little bit bored, you wouldn't spend so much time on video games. But again, throughout all of this, we're losing a connection with humans. Because once upon a time, when a person was bored and you didn't have so much technology, you had to speak with people. You had to build things and create and read and discover and use your imagination. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. This isn't just about the human connection with others. It's about connecting with yourself. When we consistently offload our brain's ability to think and process and do the tasks that make us most unique, we start to lose the ability to do it on our own. So many people have lost their imagination because they never have to use them. Don't let it be you. Don't become a zombie who can no longer think for themselves, who relies on technology for every single thing, who's lost their connection with the real world in favor of a digital one. That's not the way to do it. The same bond that it took so much time, energy, and effort to build with a human can easily be broken, which means you have to be careful. You have to be sensitive to their needs. You have to listen and develop and build the relationship. Not only do all of these things make you a better person, but they make it that much easier and more efficient for you to connect with other humans down the line. Then when we flip the dynamic and look at tech, look how unnatural it is. You can be as mean online as you want to, and there's always another community. You can be as offensive, flagrant, and disrespectful as you want to online. You can always make a new profile. You can always delete the comment. You can always choose to engage with another community. But the real world has real life consequences that forces you to become a better person. So you cannot spout off and say whatever you want without somebody checking you. People are so much more bold online than they are in real life. Why? Because they feel like the guardrails have been removed. Well, if the guardrails have been removed, maybe this is who you truly are. Which means that on some level, we need the internet simply to expose that people like this exist. But again, we have to keep it in perspective and not let those people become or influence us. This is the infinite evolution. When it comes to AI and digital communities, you're only as invested as you want to be. You can pick up your ball and leave whenever you want to. You can say whatever you want to. And on some level, it's freeing, it's necessary, and I get the value behind it. But you cannot get so lost in the sauce that you lose perspective on what's real. And that certainly isn't. You're only as invested as you choose to be. You can't offend or upset AI, which is powerful, but not without risk. Because when you do upset or offend in digital communities, there's a certain layer of anonymity that you're blessed with, and you don't have to be as accountable as when you do it in real life. Once again, we find that when people are fueled with digital courage, the limits in which they'll go are far greater than when they're in person. When 45% of men 18 to 25 have never asked a woman out in person, you know we have a problem. Something is wrong. Because when you're in the real world, much of what works online doesn't work here. And so again, this isn't a message about how we should abandon AI or technology. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We need to embrace it, but also understand all of the risks and benefit that come associated. Put up some guardrails and make sure that we keep the proper perspective and keep it in its proper place. This is the infinite evolution. We must acknowledge that with such immense power at our fingertips, we have to take that much more care in order to be good stewards of it. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. More information, opportunities, access, and everything else you could think of right at their fingertips. What do you do with such an immense gift? And how do you deal with the risk associated? How do you deal with the influencers and people who are behind the technology trying to get you to move one way or another, trying to get you to make a decision to do this or that, to make some choice that isn't in alignment with your character? Will you fall victim to the trap, or will you become aware of the pitfall and step to avoid the danger? Greater power means greater responsibility. If you know about Full Metal Alchemist, you know about the law of equivalent exchange. Nothing can be gained without something of equal value also being given. Time, energy, effort, finances, consistency. Something has to be given in order to achieve the thing. We have to be honest about the tools that we're dealing with and knowing that it's more than just benefits, but there's also potential downfalls. Just like a car or hammer or any other tool, you can build, but you could also destroy depending on how you choose to use it. When it comes to AI, social media technology, your phone is literally in the palm of your hands, and your eyes are the gateway that connects you. And with this technology, most people are consumers, not the influencer, not the one making the change or telling you what to do, but the one receiving some sort of messages, listening to some sort of rhetoric, and absorbing the energy of whatever the algorithm sends your way. But what does it look like? What are you choosing to craft for yourself? When something or someone is as close to you as the palm of your hand and you see them every single day, there's no way it won't have an influence or impact the way you think, move, and behave in some way. So you have to be that much more intentional about controlling who has access. This is the infinite evolution. At our core, we're designed to be connected. And while tech often gives the illusion of that bond because we see each other, stay updated, you know what's happening, everything that seems to be going on, you're always kept in the loop. And so it creates this false dichotomy where you feel more connected than you actually are. When something new happens, you're right there. When a story pops up, we both see it, we both comment on it, and it feels like we have the connection. And on some level, it's real, but it will always be a poor substitute for the actual human connection, and we want to make sure we never lose that. Of course, we know far more than we would if we didn't have access to this technology. When we're constantly updated, we know far more than what we could or maybe even should about people who we probably wouldn't even have a connection with. There are complete strangers who you met years ago who you would have no idea what they're doing at this very moment, but because of technology, you're connected to them in a way that isn't quite natural. And that doesn't mean good or bad, it's just to say it's not natural. You know as much about this stranger who you met 10 years ago as you do a cousin who lives out of town. The fact that you're as updated on both of these people's lives without doing any extra work should cause you to pause for a minute and just think, what else might be coming along with this? Not to say it's bad, not to say you can't do it, but what else is coming along with the constant connectedness? It's the greatest digital compliment ever. Come close to receiving your flowers in person, to receiving a hug in person, to watching somebody smile, laugh, or cry in person? Not at all. You might see a video that pulls at your heartstrings and you share in that moment with hundreds of millions of people. And maybe that's the only interaction you have. But if you have the opportunity to connect in real life too, make sure you're doing both. That way your life is that much more rich with the human connection. This is the infinite evolution. Even the idea of being confident in your lowest moments, falling back on those digital communities, the people who have been there with you for years and years and supported you from a distance, that matters. It's really important, but nothing hits like a friend putting their arm around your shoulder and letting you know that they're there for you, that you got somebody in your corner, that the embrace is real, the connection is real, and that if technology turned off today, you will still have them no matter what. To understand this connection, to value it and embrace it, this is the most important thing of all. And this is the infinite evolution. Can your mind ever hit flow states if you're constantly receiving alerts about the next biggest piece of news? I'm saying use the tech while also understanding the high stakes that are at play, which is your mind and your ability to think clearly and for yourself. Every action is preceded by thought. When your judgment is clouded and you lack the human connection, whether by choice or by influence, we lose so much of the greatest parts of what makes us unique. You are what you consistently do, and the things you do, the actions you take, are all based on the thoughts that are going on in your mind. Therefore, whoever consistently touches and controls your mindset will be the influencer and controller of your life. All I'm asking is that you be that one. We are what we consistently do. All I want is that you allow yourself to be that person who makes the biggest decisions on how your life and destiny are shaped. This is the infinite evolution.